All right, so here are some of the problems in lesson 88, that some of the students were struggling with. I'm going to just start by getting rid of the numbers because these numbers won't mean anything to you because the video would change this numbering sequence. Like this would actually be number 6, this would be number 3, and then this would be number 2. All right, so let's look at how to solve this. So the first thing we have to do is put this in descending order of the variable equal to 0. So descending order of the variable, or we should say just of x, equal to 0. Okay, so what that means is we want to make this on this side go away, and we want to have a positive x squared. So since this is positive x squared on the left, we're going to move everything to the left and put the 0 here because we want this to be positive. I know that if we moved this over, that it would be fewer steps and fewer numbers moving around, but because we want this to be positive, it's easier than moving it over and then having to multiply everything by -1. So we're just going to add 5x to both sides and subtract 24 from both sides. So add 5x and subtract 24. Draw our line. And then what we get is x squared plus 5x minus 24 is equal to 0 because this becomes 0 and this becomes 0. So that's 0 over here. Okay, now this is in descending order of x. We have x squared, x to the 1, and of course this is x0. There's no x right there, right? So descending order of the variable. And I'm going to just erase this. Get the little bitty T90 one right here. There we go. For the sake of, this is what it should look like. This is what we know the invisible one is right there, right? So now that we have it in the right order, the right format, we are going to find factors of the third term that the sum of equals the second term. Okay, find factors of the third term that the sum of them equals the second term. So what that means is the factors of -24, and I wrote 4 for some crazy reason. So the factors, you got to take the whole thing. The operation in front is the sign of the number. So we want the factors of -24 that would equal +5. Okay, so here are some factors of 24. We could say 2 and 12. We could say, we could do this one negative and this one positive. We could say 2 and 12, where this one's positive and this one's negative. We could say -6, +4. We could say +6, -4. We could say -8, +3, or +8, -3. So let's add them together. These are all -2 times 12 gives me -24. 2 times -12 gives me -24. -6 times +4 gives me -24. +6 times -4, -24. -8 times +3 gives me a -24. And a +8 times a -3 gives me a -24. So all of those pairs are factors of 24. So now we have to add them together and see what we get. If we add these two together, we get a +10. That does not match a +5, so not those. This would give us a -10, not a +5, so we get rid of those. -6 plus 4 is a -2, not those. +6, -4, that's +2, not those. -8, +3, we add them together, we get a -5. We're closer, but it's not that one. It's +8 minus 3 equals a positive 5, which is the one we're looking for. So these are the factors for the two pairs, or the pair of binomials. Now we've got x plus 8, that's our plus 8, and x minus 3 is equal to 0. Now we can check this, and that's always a good idea to make sure to check your factors. So I'm going to do that here. Check factors. So let's check our factors and make sure that they're real. So we've got x plus 8 times x minus 3. X times x, that gives us x squared. X times negative 3, that gives us a negative 3x. Positive 8 times x gives us a positive 8x. And positive 8 times negative 3 gives us a negative 24. When I combine these together, I've got these two middle terms that are like terms. I get x squared plus 5x minus 24, which is what we started with. So we know we factored it correctly. Okay, so we've checked our factors. We know that's right. That's something that if you're not sure that your factors are factored correctly, then check them. Check the factors. It is optional, right? But it can be helpful. Okay, so I'm just going to put helpful here. It's helpful to check your factors. Now that we have checked our factors, we know it's factored correctly, we are going to set each factor, and each binomial is a factor. So it's this value times this value is equal to 0. So that means that either this is 0 or this is 0. So we set each binomial equal to 0 to find the value of x. So we set each binomial equal to 0 and solve for x. So we would take x plus 8, because if this is 0, then 0 times whatever this is, it doesn't matter what this is, it's equal to 0. If this one is 0, it doesn't matter what this one is, because this times 0 would be 0. So we're going to set it such that each one of them could be 0. X plus 8 is 0. X minus 3 is 0. So I subtract 8 from both sides. X is equal to negative 8. I add 3 to both sides. X is equal to a positive 3, because that would cancel and that would cancel. Okay, so the way you can check your work through substitution. That's the last step. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the original number right here, and you're going to put each one of these in to make sure that it works, that you get, let me move this, so that you can get 0. This has to be a true statement. Remember, math is the logical pursuit of truth. So we want this to be true. Otherwise, why are we doing it? If it could be anything, there's no point in solving it, right? We want the pursuit of truth here. So I'm going to erase this over here so that we have room. We're going to use this to check our work. So first, I'm going to use negative 8 just because it's the first one over here on the side. So negative 8 squared, right? It's x squared plus 5x minus 24 is equal to 0. All right, so we're using negative 8 for x. All right, so negative 8 times negative 8 is 64. It's a positive 64 because a negative times a negative is a positive. Positive 5 times negative 8 is minus 40 minus 24. Well, look at that. If I add my negative values together, I get 64 minus 64 equals 0, We know that that is equal to 0. 0 is equal to 0. So this is true. This works. So that is a possible root of x. So now we're going to do -3. Or not -3, +3. Sorry. So I'm going to erase these. I'm going to erase this right here. And now I'm going to substitute in the +3. So 3 squared plus 5 times 3 minus 24 is 0. 3 down 3 is 9, plus 5 times 3, which is a +15, minus 24. So 9 plus 15, that's 24, minus 24. We know that that is 0, equal to 0. So that is correct, which means this is correct as well. So x has the value of -8 or +3. So you're checking your work in this last step. It is always a good idea to check your work to make sure that the roots that you found actually work, because when we get to radical symbols, sometimes they don't work. So you have to check them both anyway to see which one is the correct answer. So it's a good habit to get into before we get to that point in Algebra 1. So use these 5 steps whenever you're doing these and you will be fine, okay? Descending order of x equal to 0. Descending order of x equal to 0. Find the factors of the third term, -24, that equaled the sum of the second term. So that the sum of those equal the second term. So +8 minus 3 is a +5. So that worked out. Then you set, you check those factors. You can, just multiply them to make sure you get back to here. Then you're going to set each binomial equal to 0 and solve for x. So x plus 8 is 0, ends up being that x is equal to -8, and x minus 3 is equal to 0, ends up that x is equal to +3. Then we do a substitution to check our work. We did -8, and then we did +3. And both of those equaled 0 at the end, so they were both the correct answer. So these are the things that you would put in the blanks for this problem. Let's do the next one. So we're going to solve by factoring. So remember, our first step, we want to have everything in descending order. That's step number 1. Descending order of the variable equal to 0. So to do that, I need to bring this over here to put it with the other terms. So I'm going to add 8x to both sides. This would cancel and be equal to 0. And now if I put this in the right order, the x squared goes first, then the 8x, and then the minus 48. Now that I have it in the right order, I can look at the factors of the third term, that when added together, the sum of them gives me the middle term, or the middle coefficient, I should say. So -48, those factors need to equal a +8. So let's look at that. Let's see, we've got, for a negative, one of them needs to be positive, one of them needs to be negative. So if I've got a positive and a negative, I'm going to just do it like that to save myself some time. Actually, no, I'm not. That would be confusing. I'm just going to put them with the number. All right, so that could be 6 times 8, -6, +8. +6, -8. That's 48. What else is 48? Let's see. -2 times a +24. +2 times a -24. Also, -4 times a +12, or a +4 times a -12. All right, so now we're going to add them together. This would be a +2, so it's not those. This would be a -2, not those. This would be a +22, not those. a negative 22, not those. This would be a positive 8. So these are the ones, these are the factors that we need. So it's not going to be that one. So I would say x minus 4, x plus 12 is equal to 0. So if I check this, x minus 4, x plus 12, I need to get back to this statement right here. So x times x is x squared. X times a positive 12 is a positive 12 times x. Negative 4 times x, it's a negative 4x. Negative 4 times 12 is negative 48. When I combine these terms in the middle, I get x squared plus 8x minus 48, which is the same thing we have here. So this factoring, this is correct. All right, so now I'm going to set each one of these equal to 0 and find some roots for x. So x minus 4 equals 0. X plus 12 equals 0. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. X is equal to positive 4. Subtract 12 from both sides. X is equal to negative 12. Now I want to substitute both of these into the original problem and see if they work. So I'm going to say 4 squared plus 8 times 4 minus 48 equals 0. So that would be 16 plus 48. That's not 48. That's 32. I've almost forgot my multiplication tables for a second. That's 32. All right, so 32 minus 48 equals 0. So 16 plus 32, those are both positive, so we combine them. That's 48 minus 48 equals 0. 0 equals 0, so that one is correct. So now I do negative 12. Negative 12 times negative 12 is a positive 144. And positive 8 times negative 12, that's a negative 96 minus 48 is equal to 0. Negative 96 plus negative 48, that's 144 minus 144 equals 0. 0 equals 0. That's correct. So that one is correct. So x is equal to a positive 4 or a negative 12. All right. Are you starting to see the pattern? This is the pattern. These are always the steps, these 5 steps that you want to do. And if you do enough of these problems, you're going to just understand the process. Whenever you have these 3 forms, an x squared, an x, and a no x term, you can factor them to solve to find out what x is, what x could be. And if you have 2 terms here, then you could have 2 values of x. So let's do the very last one. Solve by factoring. Again, we have to rearrange, get it in the right order and format. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. This cancels, becomes a 0. And if I put these 3 terms in the right order, it's going to be x squared minus x minus 6. So now I'm going to factor. I'm going to take that negative 6, and notice there's no number here, but we know that's going to be a negative 1 because the 1 factor is always invisible as a coefficient. So it needs to equal negative 1. So there's really only 2 ways to make negative 6. Negative 1 times a positive 6, positive 1 times a negative 6. So 1 and 6, and then you've got 2 and 3. So negative 2, positive 3, positive 2, negative 3. When I add these together, I get a positive 5, negative 5, positive 1, negative 1. So I need a positive 2 and a negative 3. So x plus 2, x minus 3 is equal to 0. Check my work. Okay, x plus 2, x minus 3, x times x is x squared, negative 3x, positive 2x, negative 6. Combine these in the middle, x minus, and that would be 1x. We don't write that 1 minus 6. That's what we had to start with. So now we know we did that right. So this factoring is correct. So I am going to set both of these factors equal to 0. So then I have I am subtracting 2 from both sides. X is equal to negative 2. And I'm going to add 3 to both sides. X is equal to positive 3. So now I'm going to substitute to check my work. It's always a good idea to check your work. So negative 2 squared, I'm using this formula here, minus a negative 2 minus 6 equals 0. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. A negative times a negative is a positive. 6 minus 6 is 0, and it's equal to 0. And that's correct. Now I'm going to substitute in the positive 3. So 3 squared minus 3 minus 6 is equal to 0. 3 squared is 9. Minus 3 minus 6. Negative 3 and negative 6 added together, that's 9 minus 9, which is 0. That is correct. So this one is correct, and this one is correct. So x is equal to negative 2 or positive 3. Be sure when you are doing these to pay attention to the positive and the negative signs, because those things can mess you up, right? Those are the little details that can keep it from being true or incorrect. So the negative signs specifically are the ones you really have to watch, because those are the ones that will throw you for a loop. All right, that's all I have in this video. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask, and I'll see you guys as soon as possible. Bye for now.